A lot of people are talking now, of course, about the president, the effect of the local government elections. And I want to just move to the ANC for a second. You were 21 years, was it, on the NEC or the ANC? Extraordinary amount of time. I think at one conference you were actually number one in all the votes as well. There has been, and you have been part of that call for the president to resign. And there's now all these moves in the ANC between early conference, consultative versus elective. What's your view on that?
Look, I think that we need a very strong commitment to good governance and a strong commitment to the traditions of the ANC, which has to incorporate quite essentially in the interests of our people. Now, by any measure, it's shown not to be that way at the moment. Of course, we can claim that the ANC in this election, in the local government elections on 3rd of August, secured still more than twice as many votes as the DA. That actually isn't a measure of anything. The truth of the matter is that an organization like the African National Congress that has always represented some of the more advanced segments of South African society has lost metropolitan government, has lost the organized working class from its support base. And given the fact that we are now a modern economy, it's not so much how big a support base we have in the rural areas. It's whether we can advance the economic growth, build tomorrow's talent, and all of that will be happening in the cities, and we've lost control of the cities. And my view is that we must sit up and take notice of what that's about, because there's a very, very strong message in that. It's a rate of a climb down from where we've been, but I think very particularly, you can control Kobo and Pof Adda and but you don't even quite control Nkandla or Juzini. You can control Tofmvaba and Ngobo and so on. You can do that and feel self-assured that some people have listened to you. The problem is that the game in town is going to be a game that's played out in the urban environment, and that's where you don't have the support. And to merely have articulated, as the NEC did, we take collective responsibility is clearly not good enough. I remember this. On the eve of the 2014 elections, the president, wearing a red jacket, said, this is just a problem for clever blacks. Now, clever blacks have always been represented by the African National Congress. It's a movement that actually, if anything, comprised the intelligentsia of society.
Madiba, Tambo, everybody.
No, go back. Go back in the history. Pixley Kasem, the Matthews, Canon Kalat. Go back in the history of the ANC, and the African intelligentsia were always gathered in the African National Congress. Now to cast aspersions on people you call clever blacks is to say, we don't want your support. But, people who live in urban areas have access to sources of information and resources quite differently from people in the rural areas. And so when you give the middle finger to that support base, then you must carry the consequences. And I'm afraid that my reading of the situation is that the ANC will never recover its electoral support base under this current leadership. the way forward, if the ANC is interested in its own long-term interests, must be to actually share with the population a thoroughgoing, or the results of a thoroughgoing introspection, and talk about the future. You know, the idea that the ANC is set apart from other parties because this core theme of we've got a good story to tell about what we've done since 1994 doesn't wash with people anymore. And so a party worth its salt must have a message about the future, not about the past. And that message about the future is actually tragically absent. And you know, I think that the introspection must lead to a point about the future that the ANC offers under itself. And it has to be a future that deals with the big challenges in society. And yes, they are incorporated in those three strategic objectives: unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Those would be the three strategic issues, but you're not going to deal with them unless you also deal with the range of other issues. What is happening in the way in which the ANC, in a consolidated and aggregated way, messages, it cuts itself off from its support base for the future. Ask what it does about the vision for the future, the great idealism that lit up our lives. Ask what the ANC is doing to talk into that, and you'll find that it's trapped. It's entirely trapped in its own past, and so it doesn't provide a message. And that, I think, is a deep concern. And so the discussion about, perhaps it's a consultative conference that is introspection and lights a new path into the future. Perhaps if there's a fillip at that conference, some people who occupy key positions say, actually, you know, I'm not up to this. I can't lead it into the future. I'm part of the past of the ANC. Perhaps that happens and there's a resignation, but no, that would be believing in miracles. People like hanging on to power at all costs, and so become a gross disservice and a liability to our people.